Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 23 of the Berean Manifesto. 10 minutes or so a week of faith, hope, and love for the modern Christian. I'm Pastor Bill of the Ecclesian House, and in this installment, we are taking a look at faith. In Hebrews chapter 10, we find the author encouraging the Christian reader with the permanence of the salvation Christ brought versus the temporary covering of sins that the law brought. They remind us to continue to meet together and encourage each other so that we don't fall back into the sin that once held us captive. Then we get to Hebrews chapter 10, verses 32 through 39, where we read, "Remember the early days when, after you had been enlightened, you endured a hard struggle with sufferings. Sometimes you were publicly exposed to taunts and afflictions, and at other times you were companions of those who were treated that way. For you sympathized with the prisoners and accepted the joy, the confiscation of your possessions, because you know that you yourselves have a better and enduring possession. So don't throw away your confidence, which has a great reward, for you need endurance, so that after you have done God's will, you may receive what was promised. For yet in a very little while, the coming one will come and not delay. But my righteous one will live by faith. And if he draws back, I have no pleasure in him. But we are not those who draw back and are destroyed, but those who have faith and are saved." As believers today, at least in the United States, where this podcast has its largest audience, we don't really face this kind of persecution when we decide to follow Christ. And this isn't true everywhere. When I was 15, I went to Thailand for a month on a missions trip. On one of our ministry days, we met a young lady who wasn't interested in becoming a Christian, but wanted to tell us a story. It wasn't a long story, but she told us about her brother who had made their family proud by becoming a Buddhist monk. Until one day, a group of Christians came and made him into a Christian. She told us her brother left his temple, betrayed their family, and brought shame to their whole family. She told us how their whole family almost lost their jobs and how their longtime family friends wouldn't talk to the family anymore. She told us how they had told her brother to leave and she hadn't talked to him since. She was angry, hurt, sad, and confused. As she got into a car and drove away, the translator that we'd been talking to and talking through to this young lady burst into tears and sat down on the ground. That young lady was his sister. He was the brother who was a Buddhist monk and became a Christian. That was his family that disowned him for becoming a Christian. He was broken. My heart broke, and we sat there and cried until it was time to go. Ultimately, for him, this was a test of his faith and a reminder why he was in ministry with his church. The King James phrases Hebrews chapter 10, verse 38 as, "Now the just shall live by faith." It sounds like, and has been implied, that this is saying that righteous or the just live by faith. The hopefully unintended consequence there being the takeaway by many that those who aren't righteous or aren't just can't have faith. But it's really the other way around. Those who live by faith are righteous or just. The word just in there, the word in the Greek that is written there is the word Digios. Digios. It means equitable in character or act. The implication is to be innocent or holy, just, meet, righteous. Living with faith in Christ makes you equitable in character, innocent, holy, justified, righteous. Now, faith in and of itself has been a touchy topic in the modern church, to the point where some have avoided it or even rejected talking about it altogether. So, in true Berean fashion, let's talk about what faith is. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. I had a conversation one time with this gentleman who told me that he had a problem with people that believe in faith and with the whole faith movement in their belief that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So I reminded him that he literally quoted Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, which rather upset him and brought the conversation to a screeching halt. But I digress. So what does it mean that faith is the substance of things hoped for? The word for substance there is hypostasis. Hypostasis. Stasis? Close enough for my non-Greek speaking tongue. It is a setting under, a support, that is concretely essence or abstractly assurance. It's confidence, to be confident. In English, we would equate this to a foundation, like the foundation of a building. You know, when you build a skyscraper, you have to first dig down to make the foundation so it can be rooted and grounded, sometimes several floors down. Faith is the foundation for hope. And the specific word in this verse here that was translated as hoped for is the word elpizo. It is to confide. It is hope or hoped. It is trust. So faith is the supporting foundation for things that you expect. Without faith, you cannot trust. You cannot move on those things that you expect. The second half there is that faith is the evidence of things not seen. Let's take a moment and look at what the word for faith is in this verse at all. And it's pistis. It means persuasion, or it's a credence, a moral conviction of religious truth or the truthfulness of God. It is especially reliance upon Christ when they use this word here. It can also mean belief, believe, fidelity. And that really is my favorite translation for the word pistis, is fidelity. It's being faithful. It's knowing the truth and sticking to it, regardless of the evidence. Faith is pulling up to a train track that wasn't there a month ago. You've never seen a train pull down this track before. You don't know if they've even opened this track yet. But those lights start to blink and those arms start to come down and you still stop. You have faith that a train can be on those tracks and you move on hope. You move on that experience and you stop. Because faith and hope are inseparable. Faith is useless without hope. It goes nowhere. Because just to believe something without action takes you nowhere. And hope can't be moved upon without faith. I can sit in a chair and my experience tells me that the chair will hold me, but it takes faith for me to believe that it's going to hold me this time. Now, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6 says that without faith, it is impossible to please God. And why is that? Why is it impossible to please God without faith? And it's because without faith, there is no hope. And without hope, you can no longer follow and keep God's commandments. Jesus said in John chapter 14 that if we love him, that we will keep his commandments. So without faith, you can't hope. You can't move on expectation or experience. And without hope, you can't love God, because to love God is to keep his commandments. And you can't keep his commandments without hope. And you can't have hope without faith. You have to believe the promises of God without question. That's faith. You don't question the promises of God. You can go back and look in Hebrews chapter 11 at the whole list of people that believed the promises of God without question. Then, because you believe, you can act on faith, which is having hope. And in that way, you are able to keep his commandments, which is loving God. Faith leads to hope, leads to love. Those three remain, and the greatest of them is love. This is Pastor Bill saying, until next time.